When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. The speaker compares the monumental impact of a great person's death to the immense shaking of the earth when massive ancient trees come crashing down in a forest. The imagery suggests the death sends shockwaves that reverberate through the natural world, with even solid bedrock on distant hills shuddering in response. The impact of a great tree falling down is felt miles around it, symbolizing the numerous ways in which even distant people are affected by the death of somebody influential, impactful, and loved. Lions hunker down in tall grasses. So, when such a calamity happens, when such an event happens, then even the lions of the jungle, the great powerful beasts, even they conceal themselves in tall grasses and hide out of primal unease and fear, out of their own reaction to the event. This shows how the death of an influential figure shakes the very foundation of the world around them. The lion's instinctive terror reveals the true magnitude of the loss. Elephants lumber after safety. Even such great animals of huge size and stability, even they experience a pressing need to hide away and escape to safety. This shows just how momentous and impactful the death of a great soul is by depicting its ripple effects across the natural world. The elephant's reaction further highlights how deep the effects of the death or the loss of the deceased has caused. Now, the second stanza: when great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. Death of great men is such a loss that it affects the small and the great equally, irrespective of their physical status, their stature, their power, and for example, even the children and far and wide and near ones, everybody. The loss has an equal impact, as much on the weaker ones, the children, as much on their older counterparts. They are left speechless and dumbfounded at the loss. Those who are unknown, without fame or political significance, feel just as the great minds of their day feel. People fall into silence and retreat, they seclude themselves, try to alienate themselves from the rest of the world in the midst of their despair, and thus they recoil into silence. This conveys how much overwhelming the loss is, and the absoluteness of the loss is conveyed, which shows how it stuns even the natural world into shocked, mournful silence. Their senses eroded beyond fear. So, such fear, they are so shaken, so profoundly shaken and disturbed that their very senses are dulled and eroded by the enormity of what has happened, and they are overwhelmed beyond even the ability to feel anything. Third stanza: when great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. So, in the third stanza, finally, the speaker is not talking about the death of anything in the natural world, but directly she is implying at the death of human beings, death of a great soul. When great people leave, influential, impactful people, they leave the earth, then the others around who are physically weak, who are unknown, without fame or of political significance, feel just as any other great mind around them would feel the loss, and thus they fall into silence. They experience such numbness of heart, soul, and senses that They can't recognize or are even unsure of their own senses and feelings. Very air that gives them life feels suddenly suffocating. It is no longer rich and vibrant, but rare and sterile, drained of spirit. This evokes the sense of isolation in grief. So, the crushing immediate aftermath of the loss is felt bitterly. Breathing even feels labored, and vision painfully clarified, yet obscured by tears, capturing the feeling of barely being able to function initially. All the lives, all the thousands and hundreds of life which he or she has touched during their lifetime, all and each one are affected. Grief can sharpen recollection and leads to agonizing nostalgia. Our memories are suddenly intensified, fixating on missed opportunities, kind words never uttered, or walks never taken together, promises made but which remained unfulfilled. Thus, regrets gnaw at us. When a loss of such stature hits, a person's memory gets suddenly sharpened and they, with more clarity and attachment, remember the moments spent together. Precious memories yet feel like a dagger to the soul. The regret often plagues a person who has lost a dear one, and thus there is only a desperate, futile longing for more time to express the love she felt in her heart for the deceased and who was taken away too soon, whose life was snapped so cruelly, so untimely, and unfulfilled promises leave a gnawing pain of despair and regret. Fourth stanza. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. So the speaker articulates how, when these central figures die, our very sense of reality that was tethered to them disappears, unmooring us and leaving us untethered in their absence. We feel cast adrift. Our souls become diminished and drained without the spiritual nourishment and care of the beloved we have lost, and there is a sense of withering within, of shrinking down into weaker, more wizened versions of ourselves. Without their presence and inspiration, our ways of thinking that were shaped and developed under their radiant influence now feel diminished, unable to be sustained. Our minds lose their light. More than simply driving us mad or crazy, the enormity of the loss leaves us reduced to a state of inexpressible primordial ignorance, like creatures suddenly condemned to the darkness of caves. This powerfully conveys disorientation. So, mentally, emotionally, every way the living men are impacted, are affected. How our souls depend on the nurture of another, and when he leaves, it leaves us feeling small, incomplete, diminished, like our very souls, our existence has shrunk and moved into nothingness. One's mind can be informed by one's radiance. The speaker identifies with others who have felt this loss, and thus there's some kind of feeling of being united with all others who have experienced such a huge loss in their lives. So there is some kind of connection drawn that we are not just alone. Overwhelming emotions and the overwhelming words lead us to despair, and that despair is compared to a cave. Those who are left behind, they lose inspiration and fall away and get reduced to an ignorant, cave like darkness. In the final fifth stanza, and when great souls die after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. The speaker indicates that in time, peace and healing can gradually emerge after the initial anguish, but the process is always slow and non linear. The sense of the void left behind beginning to fill with an uplifting spirit, a comforting electricity and vibration, as if the person's enduring energy still resonates. Our senses are imagined restored, but they remain forever changed. Now more alert and sensitive as they whisper to us, made more receptive by the loss. The simple repetition of they existed, powerfully overcomes the finality of the loss, asserting the enduring evidence of their life. Their existence remind us to live fuller with purpose and meaning, better for having known them. In a way, the spirits fill the void that the mortal being has left behind. Thus, we are left honoring their memory throughout the continued life. Their lasting impact spurs us to live better. So, loss due to death of a loved one, which one feels, can consume and eat away at the very heart and soul of a human being, leaving a pain that nothing can heal, like an open wound that tries to heal and yet is reopened again and again by memories and regret. The speaker thus identifies with all who have felt the deep, searing pain of anguish but offers a hope at the end. The mood here transforms from despair and depression to hope, and thus implying that healing occurs in the aftermath of the death and time furthers the healing. This reveals that she still had moments of despair, anguish, even as she was slowly beginning to heal and feel peace. The pain still buzzed in the background of her very being, and yet the memory of the lost one was soothing and comforting. Eventually, the senses get restored, though nevertheless to be the same. In the back of the mind, in the background of all that we do, we can still hear the presence of the lost, hear their whisper, and feel the essence of their having lived around us. And this gives a new meaning and purpose to our life. The speaker claims that because they ever existed, our lives can be better. So that's the inspiration we can derive. And this offers great hope and consolation. Though their lives will never be the same again, there shall always be a lingering pain and sadness. There is hope for feeling and joy in the midst of even such a great loss. Thus, no matter how tragic death is, yet it is an inevitable part of human experience, and despair, misery are sure to follow. But one has to rise and exist.